The crisp white envelope on the kitchen counter looked like any other bill, maybe a reminder for a dental checkup. But the return address, Evergreen Fertility Clinic, made my breath snag in my throat. My heart began a frantic thrum against my ribs, a trapped bird. Dale wasn't home yet, his usual Wednesday late night at the office. Just me and this envelope. I'm Violet, by the way. 32 years old, married for 5, and for the last 3 of those years, my life had revolved around one singular, all-consuming goal: having a baby. This clinic, these people, they held our future in their sterile, gloved hands. My fingers, suddenly clumsy, fumbled with the flap. The paper inside was thick, expensive feeling, which somehow made it worse. Dear patient, it began, impersonal and cold. This letter is to inform you of a change to your scheduled treatment plan. Due to non-payment of the outstanding balance for Cycle 3 IVF services, we regret to inform you that your treatment has been discontinued, effective immediately. To discuss potential reinstatement, please contact our billing department at your earliest convenience. Discontinued, non-payment. The words swam. I read them again, then a third time. A buzzing started in my ears, loud and insistent like a trapped wasp. This had to be a mistake, a colossal, idiotic admin error. We'd paid. Of course, we'd paid. This cycle, our third and financially our very last shot, was everything. I'd transferred my half of the funds only last Tuesday. My entire savings, a small inheritance from my grandmother, every penny I'd squirreled away from my freelance graphic design work. I'd watched the balance leave my account, a nerve-wracking click of a button that represented so much hope. Dale was supposed to have transferred his share, the larger portion from our joint savings, weeks ago. He'd even shown me the confirmation on his banking app, a quick flash of the screen before he tucked his phone away. All sorted, Vi, he'd said, kissing my forehead. Baby Bryant, here we come. 3 years. 3 years of hormone injections that left me bloated and bruised, my stomach a patchwork of tiny purple marks. 3 years of early morning appointments, of sitting in waiting rooms filled with other women whose eyes held that same desperate, fragile hope. The invasive procedures, the emotional seesaw of raised hopes and crashing disappointments. We'd mortgaged a piece of our future for this. We'd put holidays on hold, dinners out became a rarity, new clothes and extravagance we couldn't justify. Every spare thought, every spare dollar went into the Baby Hope Fund, the name Dale had jokingly given our dedicated savings account. No, I whispered. The sound swallowed by the sudden crushing silence of the kitchen. No, this isn't right. My hand automatically went to my phone, my thumb hovering over the clinic's number. But what would they say? Sorry, Miss Violet, the money isn't here. The letter was unequivocal. Non-payment. A different kind of cold began to creep through me, starting in my fingertips and spreading inwards, far more chilling than the autumn air drifting through the slightly open window. If my money was there and the clinic said the full amount wasn't. My laptop was on the dining table. I walked towards it, each step feeling heavy, like I was wading through water. The buzzing in my ears intensified. The joint savings account, the Baby Hope Fund. It was earmarked, sacrosanct. We'd agreed. Dale knew. He knew what this meant. I pulled up the banking website, my hands shaking so badly I mistyped the password twice. The cursor blinked impatiently. On the third try, the familiar dashboard loaded. Our names were at the top, Violet and Dale. Checking regular savings, and there it was, Baby Hope Fund. My eyes scanned across to the balance column. For a split second, my brain refused to process the number. It was too small. It was impossible. I blinked, leaned closer to the screen, as if proximity would magically alter the digits. The balance, which should have been well over $50,000 after Dale's supposed transfer, after my recent deposit, read 4732, $47.32. The room tilted, not in a dizzy spell kind of way, but as if the entire foundation of my world, everything I believed to be solid and true, had just crumbled beneath my feet. The air punched out of my lungs. The letter slipped from my numb fingers and fluttered to the floor, landing face up, its polite, damning words staring back at me. Where was our money? Where was our future? The sound of Dale's key in the front door lock was like a gunshot in the suffocating silence. I didn't move from the dining table, the laptop screen still glowing with the damning numbers. The clinic letter lay where it had fallen. My hands were clasped so tightly in my lap, my knuckles were white. Vi, you home? He called out, his voice cheerful, oblivious. Footsteps approached the kitchen. Smells good. What's for up? He stopped short when he saw me, his smile faltering. Hey, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I just looked at him. My voice, when it finally came, was flat, devoid of inflection. Where is it, Dale? He frowned, setting his briefcase down. Where's what? Dinner? I can grab something if you're not feeling up to cooking. The money, Dale, I said, my gaze flicking to the laptop screen. Our money, the IVF money. He followed my gaze, and for a fleeting second something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, fear. Then it was gone, replaced by a careful blankness. What are you talking about? I transferred it, remember? I showed you. Did you? I picked up the letter from the floor and held it out. Because the clinic seems to have a different story. They say our treatment is discontinued, non-payment. He took the letter, his eyes scanning it quickly. He scoffed, a weak, unconvincing sound. Well, that's ridiculous. It must be some kind of bank error. I'll call them in the morning. Don't bother, I said, my voice still eerily calm. I gestured to the laptop. I already checked the Baby Hope Fund. There's $47 in it, Dale. 47. Where is $50,000? He stared at the screen, then back at me. The color was draining from his face. He opened his mouth, closed it again. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit. Vi, look. Where? Is it? Each word was a chip of ice. He sighed a long, gusty exhalation and slumped into the chair opposite me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Okay, look, Vera was in some trouble. Real trouble this time? Vera. His perpetually troubled, perpetually bailed out younger sister. A cold knot formed in my stomach. What kind of trouble requires $50,000, Dale? Gambling debts, he mumbled, staring at the tabletop. Some heavy guys were after her. She was terrified by. They were making threats. My breath hitched. Gambling debts? You took our baby money for Vera's gambling debts? The words felt like shards of glass in my mouth. All those injections, all those hopes, all those sacrifices for Vera to throw away at a casino? She's family, he said, his voice rising, a defensive edge creeping in. She was desperate. What was I supposed to do, let them break her legs? What about us? I cried, the calm finally shattering. What about our family? The family we've been trying to build for 3 years? That money was our last chance, Dale. You know that. We can save up again, he said, waving a dismissive hand. It's just money, Vi. Family is more important. Just money? I was on my feet now, trembling. It wasn't just money to me. It was my grandmother's legacy. It was my body pumped full of hormones. It was every single hope I had pinned on this. Just then, as if summoned by the rising tide of drama, the back door opened and Angelina, Dale's mother, swept in. She always used the back door like she owned the place. Her eyes, sharp and critical, took in the scene, my tear-streaked face, Dale's defensive posture. What's all this shouting? She demanded, her gaze settling on me. Dale called, said you were hysterical. He stole our IVF money, Angelina, I choked out. He gave it to Vera to pay off gambling debts. Angelina sniffed, her expression unchanging. Well, Vera is his sister. Family helps family. I don't see what the problem is. You're young. You can try again. Vera was in genuine distress. I stared at her, then at Dale, who was now looking relieved, bolstered by his mother's support. Their united front, their utter dismissal of my pain, of our shared dream, it was like a physical blow. You don't see the problem? I whispered, my voice hoarse. He stole our future. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Violet, Angelina said, patting Dale's shoulder. It's just a setback. Dale did the right thing by his sister. You should be more understanding, more supportive. Selfishness doesn't suit you. Selfishness! The word echoed in the sudden ringing silence. They stood there, mother and son, looking at me as if I were the one who had committed some terrible transgression. Something inside me, something that had been stretched taut for years, didn't just break. It snapped, clean and cold. The tears stopped, the trembling ceased. A strange, icy calm descended. Dale, mistaking my silence for acquiescence, even managed a small, smug smile. You'll forgive me, Vi? He said, his tone confident, almost condescending. You always do. I said nothing. I just looked at him, at both of them. Forgiveness? Oh, he had no idea. He had absolutely no idea what he just unleashed. My mind, suddenly sharp and clear, was already racing, pathways forming, a plan beginning to coalesce in the ruins of my shattered heart. The next morning, Dale acted as if a minor household squabble had been resolved. He whistled while making coffee, chattering about a new project at work. He even tried to kiss me as he left, a light peck on the cheek. I didn't pull away. I let him. Let him think his casual dismissal of our entire future was something I'd just absorbed, like always. Let him believe his mother's pronouncements had pacified me. Have a good day, Vi, he said, grabbing his briefcase. We'll talk more tonight, figure out a new plan for, things. You too, Dale, I replied, my voice even, almost pleasant. The moment the front door clicked shut, I was moving. He thought I was at home licking my wounds, probably crying into a pillow. He couldn't have been more wrong. My first call was to Samara, my best friend since college, the one person who knew the unvarnished truth of my marriage and my IVF journey. He did what? Samara's voice crackled with indignation through the phone. Violet, that's grand larceny of the heart and the bank account. I know, I said, pacing my small home office, but the way he and Angelina just dismissed it, like I was the one being unreasonable. Samara, something in me just hardened. Good, she said firmly, because understanding Violet needs to take a long vacation. You need a shark, Vi, a legal shark. She paused. I know someone. Claire. She handled my cousin's nightmare divorce. Expensive, but worth every penny. Sharp as a tack and takes no prisoners. An hour later, I was sitting in a sleek minimalist office downtown, across a polished mahogany desk from Claire. She was in her 40s, impeccably dressed, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. I laid it all out, the years of saving, the emotional toll of the IVF, the clinic letter, the empty bank account, Dale's confession, Angelina's galling interference. I brought printouts of the joint account statements showing my large deposit, and then the subsequent massive withdrawal. I showed her the clinic letter. Claire listened intently, occasionally making a note on a legal pad. She didn't interrupt, her expression neutral but focused. When I finally finished, the silence in the room felt heavy. $50,000 specifically earmarked for IVF from a joint account used by your husband without your consent to pay his sister's gambling debts, Claire summarized, her voice crisp, and his mother supports this. That's the gist of it, I said. feeling a small measure of relief just saying it all to someone who wasn't immediately telling me to be understanding. Okay, Claire said, leaning back in her chair. First, we need to protect what's left, if anything. Do you have any other joint assets, property, investments? Our house, I said. We own it jointly in a small joint investment portfolio, though I suspect that might have been plundered too if he was desperate. We'll initiate proceedings to freeze those assets immediately, Claire stated. It'll prevent him from draining anything further. Then we file for divorce on grounds of financial malfeasance and misappropriation of marital assets. We will sue for the return of your half of the IVF funds and potentially more depending on what else we uncover. Uncover? Claire gave a small knowing smile. People who do this once, Miss Violet, rarely do it only once. We'll do a thorough financial discovery. In the meantime, document everything. Every conversation, every past instance where Vera needed bailing out, every dismissive comment from Dale or his mother, dates, times, specifics, create a timeline. It all builds a pattern of behavior. I nodded, a grim sense of purpose solidifying within me. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the profound disrespect, the utter betrayal. For the next week, I became a meticulous archivist of my own misery. I combed through old emails, text messages, even my own journals. The number of times Vera had faced a financial crisis that Dale had helped with was staggering. Each time I'd voiced concern, and each time I'd been placated or dismissed. The pattern was undeniable. Dale, meanwhile, was oblivious. He'd occasionally bring up the IVF, saying things like, "We'll get back on track, Vi. I'll start putting extra aside." He seemed to genuinely believe that the $50,000 was just a temporary blip, a problem solved by his magnanimous if misguided gesture to Vera. Then one evening he came home beaming. "Guess what?" he announced, pulling me into a hug. "Vera's engaged. Some guy named Jarvis. Apparently he's loaded. They're planning a big engagement party in a few weeks." He squeezed me. "See? Things are looking up. It'll be good for us to celebrate something positive. Get our minds off, well, you know." I pulled back, forcing a smile. It felt thin, brittle, like a shard of glass. "Engaged? That's fast." "Yeah, well, when you know, right?" he said, grinning. "It'll be a great party. You'll come, of course." My smile widened just a fraction. "Of course, Dale. Positive for whom, though? That's the question." He chuckled, missing the edge in my voice entirely. "For everyone, Vi. For everyone." Little did he know the only positive outcome I was interested in was the one meticulously taking shape in Claire's office and in the cold, resolute corners of my own mind. The next meeting with Claire was a bombshell. She'd been busy. Her team had started the financial discovery process, and what they'd unearthed made the IVF money theft look like petty cash. "Mr. Dale didn't just drain your IVF fund, Violet," Claire said, her expression serious as she slid a document across the desk. "About 6 months ago, he took out a home equity line of credit, a HELOC, on your jointly owned property for $75,000. I stared at the paper, my vision blurring. "A HELOC? But I never signed anything for that. We talked about it once years ago as an emergency fund, but we decided against it." "Indeed," Claire said, tapping a section of the document. "The application lists both your names, and here," she pointed, "is what purports to be your signature." I leaned closer. It was a passable forgery, close enough to my actual signature to fool a cursory glance, but definitely not mine. The slant was wrong, the loop on the T too pronounced. My blood ran cold. He'd forged my signature on a loan application that put our home at risk. This 75,000, I stammered, my mind reeling. Was this also for Vera? Claire nodded grimly. Our preliminary investigation suggests a significant portion, if not all, went to cover a previous, rather substantial gambling debt she incurred. It seems the $50,000 from your IVF fund was merely the most recent, and perhaps most desperate, attempt to keep her afloat. 75,000 plus 50,000. $125,000 stolen, deceived, my signature forged. The scale of his betrayal was staggering, a bottomless pit opening beneath me. He hadn't just been weak and easily manipulated by his family. He had actively, deliberately, and criminally defrauded me for months. He lied to me for months, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. He watched me inject myself with hormones, cry over negative pregnancy tests, pour my heart and soul into saving for this baby, all while he was secretly draining our assets for her. It appears so, Claire said, her voice gentle but firm. This changes things, Violet. Forgery is a serious offense. This strengthens our case considerably, not just for the divorce settlement, but potentially for criminal charges should you wish to pursue them. I felt a wave of nausea. Criminal charges against my husband, the man I had loved, the man I had planned to build a life with, but the man I thought he was clearly had never existed. Meanwhile, Vera was living it up. Her social media was a nauseating parade of pre-engagement bliss. Photos of a ridiculously large diamond ring. He went to Jared, she gushed in a caption, as if that were a mark of discernment. Pictures of her and Jarvis, her new fiancé, clinking champagne glasses at expensive restaurants, posts about venue shopping for their lavish engagement party, each option more ostentatious than the last. All of it, I now realize, funded by Dale's generosity, my money, our equity. The audacity was breathtaking. She was flaunting a lifestyle bought with the wreckage of my dreams. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Angelina. Her voice was syrupy sweet, a tone that always set my teeth on edge. "Violet, dear," she cooed, "I was just calling to see how you are. Dale said you were a little upset the other day, but I'm sure you've come around. Family is so important, isn't it?" I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "I'm managing, Angelina." "Good, good, because Vera's just over the moon. This Jarvis, he's such a wonderful young man, from a very good family, you know. She's so lucky to have found him." A pointed pause. "We were all thinking of chipping in for a lovely engagement gift, something really special. Dale mentioned he'd handle his part. What were you thinking of contributing, dear?" My mind flashed to the forged signature, the empty IVF account, the mountain of debt Dale had accrued in Vera's name, all while I was planning for a child. A cold, hard fury settled in my chest, eclipsing the nausea. I took a slow, deliberate breath. "Actually, Angelina," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, even a little bright, "I have something very special planned for Vera's engagement, something she'll never forget." "Oh, how lovely," Angelina chirped, completely oblivious to the Arctic chill beneath my words. "I knew you'd come through. Dale will be so pleased you're finally being supportive." Supportive. I almost laughed. Oh, I was going to be supportive, all right. Supportive of justice, supportive of consequences. The engagement party was looking more and more like the perfect stage. The days leading up to Vera's engagement party were a master class in duplicity, my duplicity. I went to work, met my deadlines, even managed a few strained smiles for colleagues. At home, I made dinner, asked Dale about his day, listened to him drone on about spreadsheets and office politics. He seemed to genuinely believe the storm had passed, that my earlier distress had been a temporary blip. He was more affectionate, more attentive, probably out of some misguided sense of guilt mixed with relief that I hadn't, in his mind, completely lost it. "You seem better, Vi," he said one evening as I was loading the dishwasher. "More like yourself." Just tired, I guess, I replied, offering a weak smile. It's been a lot. I know, he said, patting my arm. But this party will be good. A fresh start for Vera, and maybe for us too, eh? Time to look forward. Forward. The only thing I was looking forward to was the look on his face when his world imploded. Claire and I were in constant clandestine communication. She confirmed the asset freeze was primed, ready to be triggered with a single phone call from me. The legal documents, divorce papers, the lawsuit detailing the HELOC fraud and demanding full restitution, the naming of Vera in a civil conspiracy charge, were drawn up, notarized, and waiting. We had copies of the forged HELOC application, bank statements tracing the flow of money, everything meticulously organized. There were a few close calls that made my heart hammer against my ribs. One afternoon, Dale came home unexpectedly early while I was on a video call with Claire. I slammed my laptop shut just as he walked into the home office, my face flushed. Everything all right? He asked, eyeing the closed laptop. You look flustered. Oh, just a difficult client, I improvised, my mind racing. You know how it is. Surprise deadlines. He seemed to accept it, but his gaze lingered on the laptop for a moment too long. Another time, he almost saw an email notification from Claire pop up on my phone screen. I managed to swipe it away, feigning a sudden coughing fit to distract him. The stress was a constant gnawing thing. Sleep became a luxury, snatched in short, restless bursts. My appetite vanished, but every time I felt my resolve waver, every time a pang of what-if doubt surfaced, I'd picture Vera's smug, gloating face, her hand artfully draped to show off that blood diamond of a ring. I'd remember Angelina's dismissive tone, calling me selfish, and most vividly I'd see Dale's bland assumption that I would just forgive, that I would absorb this monumental betrayal and carry on. That image more than anything fueled the icy fire in my veins. Samara was my lifeline. We met for coffee in discreet cafes far from my neighborhood, or talked in hushed tones on the phone when I was sure Dale was out of earshot. Are you sure you can go through with this, Vi? She asked one afternoon, her brow furrowed with concern. At the party? It's going to be explosive. That's the point, Samara, I said, stirring my latte with a steady hand. They wanted a celebration. I'll give them one they'll talk about for years. They built their happiness on my misery, on stolen dreams. It's time for a public accounting. Just be careful, she urged. People like that, when cornered, they can get nasty. I'm counting on it, I said, a grim little smile playing on my lips. Claire has prepared me for every eventuality. The week dragged on. Dell was increasingly excited about the party, talking about his suit, about the speech he was apparently planning to give. He was proud, genuinely proud, of saving Vera and facilitating her grand engagement. He seemed to see himself as the benevolent family patriarch, solving problems, making everyone happy. The delusion was almost pitiable if it hadn't been so deeply offensive. Then, 2 days before the party, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was Vera. Attached was a photo of the ridiculously opulent ballroom they'd booked for the engagement party. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, a dance floor big enough for 100 people. The accompanying text read, Can't wait to celebrate with family. Hope you're not still being difficult, Violet. Dale says you've calmed down. See you Saturday. XOXO, Vera. Difficult, calmed down. The sheer unadulterated audacity of it. I stared at the photo, at her breezy entitled message. My fingers tightened around the phone. Oh, she would see me Saturday, and she would learn in no uncertain terms just how calmed down I truly was. The stage was almost set. Friday, the eve of justice. The air in our house felt thick with an unspoken tension, though only I seemed to be aware of its source. Dale was practically bouncing off the walls, a caricature of festive cheer. He'd picked up his suit from the dry cleaner, a sleek charcoal gray number that he paraded in front of the bedroom mirror. "What do you think, Vi?" he asked, striking a pose. "Sharp, right? Got to look the part for the big speech." "Very sharp, Dale," I said, my voice a carefully constructed monotone. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, ostensibly reading a book, but the words on the page were just a blur. My mind was a whirlwind of checklists and contingency plans. "This party is going to be amazing," he continued, adjusting his tie, though he wasn't wearing a shirt. "Vera deserves this, you know, after everything she's been through, and Jarvis seems like a decent guy, solid. This is a real turning point for her." He paused, then looked at me, his expression softening into something almost earnest. "And for us too, maybe. Once all this celebration stuff is over, we can refocus. Start saving again for, our family." I looked up from my book, meeting his gaze. The casual way he spoke of saving again, as if the $50,000 he'd pilfered, not to mention the $75,000 from the HELOC, would just magically reappear, was astounding. As if the deep gaping wound he'd carved into our life, into my life, could be patched over with a few platitudes and a new savings plan. A chilling calm had settled over me. It was different from the icy rage of the initial discovery. This was a focused, almost serene state of readiness. Every document was triple-checked and securely stored with Claire. The process server was confirmed, briefed on exactly when and how to make his entrance. Claire had walked me through the likely reactions, the potential fallout, the immediate next steps. I knew my lines, my role. The mask of the supportive, if slightly subdued, wife was firmly in place. "Maybe," I said, offering a small, non-committal smile. He beamed, taking my response as agreement. "That's the spirit. It's all going to work out, Vi. You'll see." Later that evening, I went through the motions of picking out an outfit for the party. Dale watched me, offering unsolicited advice. "That blue dress is nice. Shows off your eyes." Or, "Maybe something a bit more festive? It's a party after all." I settled on a simple, elegant black sheath dress, understated but powerful, like a judge's robe, I thought. With a flicker of dark humor, I laid it out on the bed, along with a pair of classic black heels and a discreet clutch, just large enough for my phone and a few essentials, but not so large as to look out of place. Samara called, her voice a nervous whisper. "You okay? D-Day -1. "I'm good, Sam," I said, surprised by how steady my own voice sounded. Strangely calm, actually. It's like all the anger has burned away and what's left is just purpose. "You're my hero, you know that?" she said. "Seriously, most people would just crumble, or scream and shout and then eventually give in." "I think I did crumble for a bit," I admitted. "But then I looked at what was left and I decided to rebuild, on my own terms, with a wrecking ball for a foundation if necessary." We talked for a few more minutes, her words a comforting balm of support. After we hung up, I stood in the quiet of the bedroom, the black dress a stark silhouette against the pale comforter. Tomorrow. Tomorrow the charade would end. Tomorrow the carefully constructed world of Dale, Vera, and Angelina would come crashing down. As we got ready for bed, Dale was still humming, full of nervous excitement for the next day. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, nuzzling my neck. "This is going to be great, Vi," he murmured against my skin. "A real fresh start for everyone." I leaned back against him, my body stiff, unresponsive. He didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he attributed it to my usual reserve. He kissed me good night, a light, confident brush of his lips against mine. "Tomorrow will be great, Vi. You'll see." I turned to face him in the dim light, forcing a small smile. "I'm sure it will be unforgettable, Dale." He chuckled, pulling the covers up. "That's the plan." He had no idea at all how true those words were. Unforgettable. Yes, that was precisely what it was going to be. The ballroom was even more ostentatious in person than Vera's filtered photos had suggested. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, casting a glittering, slightly harsh light over the assembled guests. A string quartet sawed away in one corner, their classical music barely audible above the cacophony of chatter and forced laughter. Waiters circulated with trays of champagne and tiny, unidentifiable canapes. It reeked of unearned luxury, of money spent with careless abandon. My money, our home's equity. Vera was the undisputed queen of the hour, resplendent in a sequined gown that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her arm was looped possessively through that of her fiancé, Jarvis, a blandly handsome man with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. She preened under the attention, her laughter loud and frequent, her hand constantly fluttering to her chest to draw attention to the enormous diamond. Dale was in his element, beaming like a proud father. He glad-handed guests accepted congratulations on Vera's behalf, and generally basked in the reflected glory. Angelina, draped in a garish purple dress, held court near the overflowing buffet table, regaling a captive audience of distant relatives with tales of Vera's wonderful catch. I moved through the room like a ghost, a polite smile fixed on my face, accepting air kisses and offering murmured congratulations. Inside, I was a coiled spring, every nerve ending thrumming with anticipation. Claire's final instructions echoed in my mind. Let them get comfortable. Let them feel secure. The higher they are, the harder they fall. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of small talk and forced smiles, Dale tapped a champagne flute with a spoon, calling for attention. The string quartet faded out. A hush fell over the room. "Friends, family," Dale began, his voice booming slightly too loud in the sudden silence. He raised his glass. "Tonight, we celebrate a truly joyous occasion. My wonderful sister Vera and her fantastic fiancé Jarvis. It's a testament to love, to new beginnings, and to the enduring strength of family." He looked directly at Vera, his eyes shining with pride. "Vera, I've always known you were destined for great things. And Jarvis, welcome to the family, son. We're thrilled to have you." He was about to continue, probably with some platitude about how family always supports each other, when a figure detached himself from the edge of the room, a man in a nondescript suit, carrying two thick manila envelopes. He moved with quiet purpose, heading straight for Dale. This was it. The process server, exactly as Claire had described, reached Dale and, with a polite but firm "Mr. Dale," handed him the first envelope. Dale looked confused, his smile faltering. The man then turned, located Vera in the crowd, and handed her the second envelope. "Miss Vera?" The music had completely stopped. All eyes were on Dale and Vera. A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Dale tore open his envelope. His face, just moments before ruddy with celebratory cheer, began to drain of all color. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second. His jaw went slack. I could see the words from across the room, even if I couldn't read them. Petition for dissolution of marriage. And beneath that, notice of immediate freeze on assets, followed by a detailed list that included our house, our joint accounts, and a demand for the full repayment of $125,000 in misappropriated funds, specifically citing the IVF money and the fraudulently obtained HELOC. Vera, looking bewildered, opened hers. Her eyes widened in disbelief, then horror. She was named as a co-defendant in the civil suit for conspiracy to defraud. Angelina, sensing disaster, started to push her way through the crowd. "What is this? What's going on?" she demanded, her voice shrill. Then Jarvis, Vera's wonderful fiancé, stepped forward, his bland smile replaced by an expression of outrage. He snatched the papers from Vera's trembling hand. "This is ridiculous!" he shouted, his voice ringing through the stunned silence. "Vera told me you agreed to help her, Dale. She said Violet was fine with it. We were counting on that money for our future, too, for the down payment on our house." A collective gasp went through the room. His parents, a well-dressed older couple standing near the gift table, looked utterly horrified. Jarvis's admission, his open confession that he knew the money was, at best, dubiously obtained and that he was banking on it, hung in the air like a toxic cloud. So much for the good family. He was just another grifter, hitching his wagon to Vera's star, or rather to Dale's willingness to steal for her. Amidst the growing chaos, Vera finally found her voice. It was a shriek, high-pitched and furious, directed entirely at Dale. "You promised," she screamed, her face contorted with rage. "You promised this wouldn't happen. You promised she'd just roll over and accept it. You said she always does." Dale didn't respond. He couldn't. He was staring at me, his face a mask of dawning comprehension. For the first time, he wasn't seeing the quiet, accommodating Violet he'd taken for granted for so long. He was seeing the woman he had catastrophically underestimated. I met his gaze, my own cold and unwavering. The polite smile was gone, replaced by a steely resolve. "You chose your family, Dale," I said, my voice clear and carrying easily in the sudden shocked silence. "Now I'm choosing my future." The fallout from Vera's unforgettable celebration was swift and brutal. The engagement party ended not with a champagne toast, but with Angelina's hysterics, Vera's sobbing accusations, and Jarvis's parents practically dragging him out of the ballroom by his ear, their faces masks of fury and embarrassment. The other guests melted away, whispering amongst themselves, eager to dissect the drama from a safe distance. Claire, true to her word, had insulated me from the immediate mess. The asset freeze held firm. The locks on the house were changed the very next day. Dale, with nowhere else to go and no access to funds, was forced to move into Angelina's spare room. A fittingly ironic twist. I could only imagine the atmosphere in that house. Vera's engagement to Jarvis imploded spectacularly. His "we were counting on that money" outburst had been witnessed by too many people. His family, keen to distance themselves from the Bryant brand of financial ethics, issued a terse statement severing all ties. Vera was left with a canceled wedding, a mountain of fresh debt from the party itself, and the looming legal repercussions of the civil suit. Her gambling debts, once Dale's problem, were now solely hers. The legal battle was, as Claire had predicted, contentious, but ultimately one-sided. The evidence of the forged HELOC was irrefutable. Dale's attempts to paint himself as a victim of Vera's manipulation fell flat against the cold, hard proof of his deliberate actions. Angelina tried to intervene, calling Claire's office repeatedly with threats and pleas, but Claire handled her with icy professionalism. In the end, the settlement was significantly in my favor. I recovered the entirety of the IVF funds and a substantial portion of the equity Dale had siphoned off through the HELOC. The house, tainted by too many bad memories, was sold as part of the divorce agreement. The proceeds, after settling the remaining mortgage and legal fees, left me with a comfortable nest egg, financial security. It was a strange feeling after years of scrimping and saving for a dream that had turned into a nightmare. The dream of a child with Dale was dead, of course. That was the hardest part. There was a deep, aching sadness for that loss, for the future I had envisioned, the little phantom hands I'd imagined holding. That grief was real, and I knew it would take time to process. But intertwined with the sadness was a fierce, undeniable pride in my own strength. I hadn't just rolled over. I hadn't just accepted. I had fought back. The revenge, as public and devastating as it was, had been satisfying. Not in a gleeful, vindictive way, but in the way that seeing justice served can be. It was a necessary rebalancing of the scales. They had chosen their path, made their decisions, and now they were living with the consequences. Karma, as they say, can be a real piece of work. I started therapy, something I probably should have done years ago. Talking through the betrayal, the anger, the grief with a neutral third party was incredibly healing. Samara remained my rock, always ready with a sympathetic ear or a much-needed dose of outrage on my behalf. "So, what now?" she asked me one afternoon as we sat in my new, much smaller but entirely mine apartment, surrounded by unpacked boxes. I looked around at the blank walls, the unfamiliar view from the window. It wasn't the life I had planned, not by a long shot, but it was a life, a new beginning. "Now," I said, taking a sip of my tea, "I figure out what Violet wants. Just Violet." The thought of dating again felt miles away, but the idea of family in some form still flickered. Maybe fostering someday, maybe adoption as a single parent, or maybe just finding peace and purpose in my own independence, in my work, in my friendships. The options felt open, less defined by someone else's desires and deceptions. I didn't hear much directly from Dale or his family after the divorce was finalized. Snippets would filter through mutual acquaintances. Dale struggling to find a new job with a financial fraud judgment hanging over him. Vera working a string of low-paying retail gigs, her former lavish lifestyle a distant memory. Angelina, bitter and isolated, her social circle having shrunk considerably after the public humiliation. Their lives, once propped up by deceit and entitlement, had unraveled. That was their karma. My revenge hadn't brought back the stolen years or the lost dream of a baby with the man I thought I knew, but it had brought closure. It had brought justice. And most importantly, it had brought me freedom. Freedom to heal, freedom to rebuild, freedom to define my own future on my own terms. The price of their dreams had been my devastation. The cost of my karma was their reckoning. And as I looked out at the city skyline from my new window, I felt a quiet, resilient hope. I was stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next.